Look, we're recording this before Captain Marvel opens. There's rumblings that it's going
Yes.
to flop.
Or isn't it called Marvels? Is
Yeah,
that what it's called? Marvels or something? I don't know.
Shazam 3. I don't care what
Just
they call it. It's the Marvels. It's coming out. There are rumblings. It's going to be a flop. There are rumblings
yes.
that Brie Larson will quit Marvel, not return for that role, which that's girl power if I ever heard it.
Well, I mean, at this point, this is an unfounded rumor at this point, but at this point in time, like there are even reports coming out that Kevin Feige himself is thinking about leaving the Marvel machine and moving on to other projects within the Disney realm. So,
I wouldn't blame him.
I mean,
It's been a long time.
it's a
Uh,
tough road right now, man. It's a tough road of bomb after bomb after bomb after bomb for both comic book studios at this point. I mean, DC's in the same boat right now, really. I mean, it has a little bit more excitement behind what's coming in the future, with James Gunn coming on. But, I mean, comic book movies, if you're a comic book movie fan, like, this is not necessarily a great time for you.
well, it's like a hangover. I'm not saying we're seeing the actual crumble of this whole enterprise. I just think we are seeing audiences trying to signal that they're ready for some diversity, some
I
variety.
think,
They have not
yeah.
completely lost interest in those lower mid-budget movies that were vehicles for stars or celebrated writers and directors. Like they have an appetite for that.
I mean, I think like with anything, the pendulum has to swing back. We had like over 10 years of Marvel box office dominance. And so the pendulum had to swing back at some point. We had to get to a point where comic book films aren't really in the greatest shape or aren't doing the best. And that's just going to happen with anything. I mean, anything that becomes incredibly popular is going to not be popular. And then maybe it comes back, maybe it doesn't.
Anything that
Hopefully it
becomes
survives.
popular but is also specifically tied to literally one studio and one
Yes.
storyline. I mean, that's the
Right.
really fascinating thing about the MCU is if these movies were made by different studios, uh, different styles, different directors who were allowed to bring their own style, that would be a different case, right? It's literally the fact that we have a factory putting their name on movies that are clearly being put through this assembly line. And that's just a known secret. Like, I'm not
Right.
being controversial or hurtful. I think they're on the verge of boasting about that. I'm waiting for the Russo brothers to actually come out and brag about the fact that they didn't cast any actors for their latest film, The Gray Man 2.
I want to know, you are somebody who brought this film to the show
I
today.
am somebody who brought this film
Um,
to
and
not that bad.
I would like to know a few things. I want to know kind of your relationship with the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a whole, and what kind of prompted you to stick up for Iron Man 2 in this episode.
Yeah, the answer to the second is really simple and has very little to do with the MCU. So I'll get through my thoughts on that property quickly, and we've alluded to it.
Yeah.
I checked out after Avengers Age of Ultron, and I
Oh,
would
okay.
still occasionally pop my head back in. If there was a Thor Ragnarok, if there was serious word of mouth, uh, that I wouldn't ignore the MCU. Um, but more often than not, I wasn't impressed. And that's not because Martin Scorsese told me to not be impressed. It's, you know, um, I
Very
love
fair thing to
superhero
say.
movies. Some of my favorite movies are superhero movies. I think we
Yeah.
talk about superhero movies all the time on here because even
Yeah.
ones that are considered subpar, like RoboCop 2, I have a huge affinity for. So it's a weird thing to be on this position of hurling grenades at the main factory of superhero cinema.
Yeah.
But I've just come to feel that superheroes and comic book culture, it is not countercultural anymore. It is the culture. It's this monolithic thing that's kind of snuffing out the competition. Robert Downey Jr. bragged about that on Howard Stern. And he's right. I mean, box office number wise, cultural impact wise, I mean, it's hard to argue. The only other competition are the legacy franchises like Star Wars. So it just became this like overwhelming, almost tyrannical thing. Some directors have escaped, some actors have escaped. Edgar Wright was nearly sent to the gulag, and he managed the last ditch escape. And it's ironic because I actually think Ant-Man is one of the more pleasant, one of the more charming MCU movies, and that's the one that actually started to turn the tides of film bros against Marvel, right? But yeah, the reason that I nominated this for Not That Bad doesn't really have much to do with any of that, the MCU. Although there's some of that in my reasoning to pick this movie. No, the big reason I picked this movie, two words, Mickey Rourke. It's as simple as that. We'll get into it more as we go along, but uh, the reason this movie has stayed with me when it has been forgotten by so many other people is just because of Mickey Rourke's performance and the moment in time that this represented for his career. So it's as simple as that for me. Turning it over to you, right?
Oh, I have to be upfront and honest about something before we talk about this movie and before we ultimately, I think Marvel talk will be kind of infused throughout this episode. I'll be completely transparent about this. I'm a bit biased against the MCU. I think we are in a very interesting time, and we were born at a very interesting time because we were kind of we were born at the stage where like comic book movies were just starting to kind of be cool. Like we were getting to the point where like Blade had came out the year we were born, I believe. 98 is, I think, the year that was released. And then, we would get X-Men and we would get the Spider-Man movies. So we were kind of, as we were growing up, superheroes were kind of getting cooler and cooler. But even then, early 2000s, ask the average person who Black Widow is. Ask the average person who Vision is, or uh, you know, who who's Scarlet Witch, or who's any of these people.
Who
Nobody's
the
really gonna
Guardians of the
know
Galaxy are.
who are the Guardians of the Galaxy. That's a huge one. Who's Doctor Strange. Nobody knows who these people are. Now, I did grow up a big comic book fan in general. My dad was really big into comics. I still have several, little collectibles, little Captain America here. I got a big old Iron Man collectible here. So like I am in it somewhat, but the MCU I had such a hard time with because so many people in my life, I was just one of those people who I've always kind of been a bit of a contrarian. I mean, we do a show about movies people don't like, so that makes sense. But the big thing is like how people would treat you when the MCU was getting started and you didn't like a movie. It was like you just committed a cardinal sin. People aren't like that as much anymore. Some people in my life are. Looking at you, Kevin. But but I'll say this: like I want to like any movie I watch. Despite my biases against Marvel and not wanting to watch these movies, when I do finally watch them, I want to enjoy it. And there are several that I really do enjoy. I love Black Panther. I really liked Guardians of the Galaxy. There's quite a few movies in there. Captain America: Winter Soldier. I love that movie.
And hey, Daredevil on Netflix is one of my favorite shows of all time.
Daredevil was a great effort. I watched most of Punisher, and that was a good effort. I think I wasn't totally in tune with that
Not
version
a
of
big
the
fan of
character.
the other Marvel Netflix shows.
I get it. I mean, I didn't even bother with most of them. I didn't even. Uh,
Strangely, the one that
yeah,
I think I liked second best was Iron Fist, which was universally hated, is probably the
never even saw
most
it.
hated uh, uh, piece of media to bear the Marvel Studios logo. Very curious to me. I thought it was fine. Um,
It could very well be. Yeah, and I'll be honest though, like Iron Fist and several other those shows, that's just like a trend. That's part of the trend for me. Like I did not watch a lot of these movies because I kept tuning into the wrong ones. I did not like Age of Ultron. I did not like Thor: Dark World or whatever it's called. I did not like any movie I felt like I was tuning into. I was like, this is so empty, and I'm not having a good time. And some of those would break the mold. I think, Ragnarok is one that I had fun with. And, of course, when we got to Infinity War, it was like, okay, yeah, yeah, I see what they're doing. But I tuned out like more than I would say even more than you did. And I haven't been
Well, I
able to
was
get back in.
invested enough in the MCU to be excited for the Avengers. Iron Man coming out in 2008, seeing that was a big moment. Um, if we want to go into the history of that first Iron Man movie, which we probably should,
Yeah,
um,
at least briefly.
I mean, as a kid, not knowing who Robert Downey Jr. is, just being really excited that not only are they making an Iron Man movie, it actually looks pretty good. Um,
Hmm.
as soon as that first trailer dropped, the whole attitude about that movie and the Marvel Cinematic Universe completely changed. Because I have to imagine that people thought Robert Downey Jr., who was more famous for his stints in prison and his very public
Right.
battle with substance abuse problems, him playing Iron Man, it was not a recipe for success. Really, they wrestled victory from the jaws of defeat, and they did it in spades because, I mean, if it weren't for the fact that The Dark Knight came out that same year, Iron Man would be considered one of the biggest cultural moments of 2008. And there are people who even prefer Iron Man to The Dark Knight. Those people exist. Would love to have a conversation with them because um, that movie does hold up, but it drops off in quality in a very serious way in that third act. And as soon as Jeff Bridges gets into that goddamn suit, the movie just loses me, and and it doesn't recover for me. So that's me and the first Iron Man. Fine movie, decent movie. Um, Gave us a kind of revolutionary performance by Robert Downey Jr., whose career I really want to get into because he's the other really fascinating part of this whole MCU saga. But yeah, I was also excited for Iron Man 2. Probably because I enjoyed Iron Man, but just because I was very intrigued um, by what we knew about this movie. I thought bringing in Whiplash, one of the few Iron Man villains I knew, and setting up this rivalry between them, it just looked like a really intriguing uh, kind of direction in contrast to the first movie, which was just this big, huge hero's journey for Tony Stark, the lovable creator of weapons of mass destruction. I don't know. I mean, does your history with the Iron Man movies specifically, does it differ from that? Did you have a? I mean, I know we talked about the MCU, but what about Iron Man specifically?
I actually didn't see the first Iron Man till like 2010, I think. Like I was not in the realm of like excitement that everybody was. I really didn't care, to be honest, because at that point I was coming off of. I have gone on record in saying I'm not really a fan of the Incredible Hulk, the Edward Norton version of that movie. I did not enjoy it. So
That's a movie that does not exist.
yeah.
There's a
So
Mandela effect going on because there's no way that movie really exists. I just
um,
imagined that Edward Norton played the Hulk at some point,
yeah,
right?
I have a hard time believing it sometimes. But
I
I
think he does
either
too.
way, I have memories. Yeah, I have memories of not enjoying it. And so when I saw the trailer for Iron Man, I was like, oh yeah, that looks pretty good, but like I don't care. And so I didn't watch it for a while. And then like all these other you started getting news about all these other movies, and of course other movies started coming out, and I was like, maybe I should watch it. Like maybe I should just check it out. I thought it was okay. Like I wasn't blown away. I really liked Robert Downey Jr.'s performance, and that's really like that. I have Iron Man to thank for what began my like fascination with his career, and getting to watch some of his other works, and like some of his works
Oh
I
yeah.
think are real masterpieces.
Oh yeah. No,
Um,
Iron Man is a real gateway drug into
yeah,
Robert Downey Jr.'s career. No pun intended.
Yeah,
Ooh,
yeah.
I can't say that in all
Yeah.
honesty. I
Now
can't say that.
I was familiar with him already when I was a little younger than this. I would say probably in 2008 or 9. I watched the comedy Back to School, which has Robert Downey Jr. in it. I love that movie even to this day. Rodney Dangerfield, I think, is great. So I was familiar with who he was. Even watching the movie, I was kind of shocked. I was like, "Oh, like he can play pretty serious and he can be funny and like the same thing. Like this is pretty cool." Getting it, I have it to thank for getting me into the rest of his career. I think he has a better movie that came out the same year as Iron Man, personally. But I'll say this: I appreciate it for what it is, a jumping off point for something that truly brought this sort of niche interest, truly solidified its place in the mainstream. I don't believe we would have had that without that first Iron Man movie, and with how people felt about it. The hype was real, and it was sustained, even at the time that I watched it in 2010. So
Yeah, I mean, what Iron Man did was prove that there could be interest in superhero movies that didn't star the A tier
yeah,
characters,
right,
right?
yeah,
Because it's one thing to have a smash hit with Batman, Spider-Man, Superman, but the fact that they took the popular consciousness by the throat with an Iron Man movie. Like, I was a nerd, I was a little geek. I don't even think I knew the name of Iron Man's alter ego. Like, I don't think I knew the name Tony Stark. It just, I mean,
I
that
mean,
he was just a very niche character, even by the standards of that culture. Um, and nobody that I knew who was raving about Iron Man had been a fan of the comics or even maybe a fan of Robert Downey Jr. It was just this moment where a bunch of people who had something to prove, John Favreau, he really was trying to take his directing career to the next step. Robert Downey Jr. wanted to have the comeback of the century, and Marvel Studios, who had they had sold the rights to their biggest characters. They didn't have the rights to Spider-Man or the Fantastic Four. They just had characters like Iron Man, and they needed to prove something. And that's and I know we're basically kind of putting the cart before the horse here, but if I was to
yeah.
say anything about the current state of Marvel as far as where they went wrong, I just think they lost the eye of the tiger. They lost the need to prove themselves. Now they are the machine. No pun intended. Kind of intended. I don't know. I can't tell the puns I intend anymore.
Yeah.
But holy shit, we haven't really started talking about Iron Man
No,
2
we haven't.
yet.
No, we haven't. No, we haven't. And I think we I before we get into it, I do just want to say I completely agree with you. I think they really took a chance with Iron Man because I mean we've talked about comic book movies on this show before. Punisher was a character who's pretty recognizable. I mean, very popular T-shirt seller. The Punisher was, and so they released the 2004 film, and it did okay. And then Punisher Warzone came out the same year as Iron Man. And so it just kind of shows you two sides of that coin there. They really took a chance on Iron Man, and eventually, obviously, that was successful because we're talking about the sequel, Iron Man 2. So let's get into it. Where do you want to kick this conversation off on the analysis of this movie?
I did openly say why I wanted to talk about this movie, why I'm inclined to defend it. And the thing that really just gets a raw deal as far as this movie's legacy goes, because nobody talks about this anymore. It was a big sort of conversation that people were having back in the day, in this very small window of time when Mickey Rourke crawled out from the friend she'd been laying in for like
Yeah.
2 decades, and he was back in the spotlight. Yeah, man.
Yes.
Okay, Mickey Rourke, he plays a character named Whiplash, and he's not the only character I like. He's not. He's one of many things I like about this movie, but I've always said that he was the exception to the rule as far as MCU's terrible reputation with villains. Before Killmonger, before the Kingpin, he was that exception to me. And he's something that is a drastic improvement over the first Iron Man. because
Yeah.
I think even fans of that movie will acknowledge that Obadiah Stane ain't it. You know,
Right.
all respect to Jeff Bridges, of course. But yeah, I, let's sum up his as the context of his career very briefly, and why I care so much. Mickey Rourke is one of my favorite actors, and he's
Oh,
also one of
nice.
the biggest kind of tragic career stories of Hollywood for me. He has one of the best runs I think any actor can um, can claim in the 80s. I mean, Diner, the Pope of Greenwich Village, Angel Heart. I'm sure there are some that aren't even coming to mind. I mean, he just had these huge movies in his career that even if the movies weren't great, I mean, the charisma he had, the completely unique, um, effortless charm and vulnerability and masculinity that he blended together in this just unbelievable kind of a kind of monument
Yep.
of talent. I don't know. I'll just repeat what everybody's always said about Mickey Rourke. He was on the rise to have one of the best careers of any actor of his generation, and for one reason or another, he blew it. He took the shittiest roles, just for money. He quit to become a boxer, which I don't know if maybe if that career had worked out, we would look at it differently. But it's like Michael Jordan leaving the NBA to go play baseball.
It's very
Um,
similar.
and Mickey Rourke didn't have a great record as a boxer. The only thing that accomplished for him was that he got his face bashed in by a bunch of professional heavyweights. And he went from being one of the sexiest men of his generation to one of the freakiest looking. You
One of the
can see it in the
scariest.
image behind me.
Yep.
No prosthetics needed for this look. Okay, he is just a completely transformed man. Very, it's a challenge to watch his later movies because of that. But need I remind you that before Iron Man 2, he had probably a resurgence I would I would equal to Robert Downey Jr.'s resurgence with The Wrestler, Sin City. Before that, he was actually,
Yep.
his career was revived by a comic book movie too, come to think
Yes,
of
it
it.
was.
So he just, and now that he's reinvented himself, he's a fascinating, compelling actor in a totally new way, in a different way, but still just as magnetic. He's just its unparalleled screen presence. You can call him ugly, but he brings something to this role that no other movie star could. He sells this role. He brings menace, spontaneity, unpredictability, vulnerability, even. And I don't know. This character is not given the screen time he deserves to be fleshed out to become one of those top tier characters. We'll get into that, but I'm going to throw it to you. I've just laid out everything I have to say about Mickey Rourke. I'm curious, what you have to say to that, if you have your own relationship or history with Mickey Rourke.
I love Mickey Rourke. I didn't become familiar with him until his resurgence, but I am a huge Sin City fan. I love that movie. I will I will defend that movie from a lot of people because especially as time goes on, I think people kind of sour on how those effects looked, and I just think it was just a perfect capture of what that movie exactly. It was exactly what it should have been in my mind. And Mickey Rourke was my favorite actor in that movie as far as his performance goes. I thought it was amazing.
I think he's
Um,
most people's favorite part of that movie, right?
I would hope so. I mean, there's a lot of I mean, there's good people in that movie. I mean, Bruce Willis is in that movie. There's quite a few good performances, but
Yeah, not to put the
um,
other actors
right,
down. It's just
he's just
it's
he's
an
above
incredible
everyone
role.
else. Yes,
He was perfect casting. Um,
perfect.
and and they really took a chance on him because I don't even think he was insurable when he got cast in Sin City. Like similar to Robert Downey Jr., the Bond companies would not insure Mickey Rourke, so he was as close to being unhireable as you could basically be.
Yeah, and you mentioned The Wrestler, which I really want to mention because that actually came out in 2008, same year as Iron Man, the first Iron Man, and thought I thought he, Oscar worthy performance in my mind. Unfortunately, wrestling fans know we might be getting ready to see life imitate art. If you know the ending of The Wrestler, hopefully that does not happen in real life, but there's a very good chance that it will very soon. Fingers crossed that that does not happen. Wrestling fans know what I'm talking about, but
I don't know what you're talking about. Is somebody gonna is somebody gonna
potentially. So
die?
have you ever heard? Do you know how much do you know about wrestling in all? Not too much.
I mean, I know names. I know
Names. Okay. Are
big
you familiar
names.
with the name Ric Flair?
Oh my God, Ric Flair. Okay, my dad has literally been mistaken for Ric Flair a number
Really?
of times in his life. So
Wow.
much so that he bought a doll, like an action figure of Ric Flair's, that sits on our shelf at my parents' house. Okay,
Okay.
very familiar with Ric Flair.
So Ric Flair just signed a contract to wrestle for a company at 74 years old. And he will be wrestling. And the last time he wrestled at 72 or 3 years old, he passed out in the ring while wrestling. So we
Didn't
might
he just
see
have
him.
cancer? I'm
We,
sorry. Did
yeah,
he just
he's.
like
Oh
go through?
no, I mean he's been through everything. He literally would drink nonstop every day for 40 or 50 years. So like the guy's been through the ringer. He's been in a plane crash. He's done drugs. He's done everything. He's been in the hospital. He was literally given hours to live at one point, and he's still here. But he
Woo!
is going to Randy the Ram himself, and that's very unfortunate. Let's hope and pray that does not happen. However, back to Mickey Rourke. When I saw that he was going to be in this, that heightened my urgency to see Iron Man, and that's the truth. Um, the rest of the movies coming out definitely put that into perspective for me. Like, oh, this is a franchise. Like, I need to get on this. I'm a big franchise person. I like to support them when they're done right. And so I got excited. But when I saw Mickey Rourke was going to be in this movie, I was like, oh man, I really need to get it in touch with this. So yeah, I it pains me to say this, but I was a little disappointed with this movie and his performance. Not what he did. I think his performance itself was very very good. But I want to throw this to you because it's very clear what they were setting up with him. This movie is a lot of setup for a really good story. And the really good story that they had with Ivan Vanko, who is the Whiplash character, is that he is the polar opposite of Iron Man. He is the opposite of Tony Stark. He's like the bizarro Tony Stark. He
But he's
he
the
is
Soviet Tony Stark, right? I mean,
right.
they're playing off of Cold War tensions.
And they had such a good story between those two characters that I was when I was rewatching it, I was like, "Oh my god! Like, is this actually gonna be like amazing? Like, this is perfect. This is the perfect setup. I don't remember any of this. Why don't I remember any of this? And the reason I don't remember any of it is because they don't let it go anywhere.
So
He's
I'm
barely in
going
this. You
to
forget he's there at one point.
look. That's one of the big criticisms. First off, now that we're talking about the writing, do you know who wrote this movie?
No, I am
It's
unprepared.
super random. Do you know the actor Justin Theroux?
Yes,
Yeah,
he
from
wrote this.
Mulholland Drive. Yeah, he wrote this movie. I think it's one of his only writing credits.
Wow, I did not know that. I had no idea.
So,
I think he wrote. Didn't he write Tropic Thunder too?
did he?
I think he did.
I mean, if that's the case, that's probably Robert Downey Jr. getting one of his homeboys a
I mean,
sweet gig.
more than likely. I'm going to confirm that while you're talking here.
So I am going to challenge this idea that Whiplash is totally wasted because I don't think that's completely true. I think he is far and away the most dynamic and electrifying thing about the movie. He steals the scene.
Electrifying.
And again, they took something that was infamously lame from the comics, Whiplash, the character of Whiplash. And the design, the makeover they gave him, I mean, it's like you couldn't have reinvented that character in to make it a bigger improvement, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But here's the really interesting thing about this movie. Okay, we have two villains, but they're not just two villains that team up. They are two foils for the different sides of Tony Stark's dual life, his duality.
Right. Yeah.
Tony Stark and Iron Man. Justin Hammer wants to be Tony Stark, and Whiplash, Ivan Vanko, is the rival, the foil for Iron Man. So I don't feel that this character is totally wasted, because I do think they find a really good place for him in this narrative, in this story. And his scenes with Sam Rockwell, you will the MCU is famous for having a great sense of humor. That's their strong point. I don't think any chemistry crackles on screen like between Mickey Rourke and Sam Rockwell. Sam Rockwell, who is just, he's the MVP of this movie. He keeps this movie, keeps me engaged from minute one to minute done.
I wrote down, I literally, one of the notes I put is Mickey Rourke should be the best part of this movie. Sam Rockwell is instead. Because that's exactly the truth. When you meet the Whiplash character, you're like, oh my God, this is going to be the best character in any of these movies. This is going to be so good. This is going to be tragic. He's going to be like a Frankenstein version of Iron Man. This is going to be so cool. He's the tragedy. He's everything. This is great. And then by the end of the movie, you're just like, Sam Rockwell was really good. Justin Hammer was
doing
pretty good.
What he does best.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's specifically the chemistry between them.
They do have good chemistry. I'll admit that.
Yes. I think elevates this material so much. And then, look, some people complain about the I want my bird. They complain about that. No, sir, that shit is funny. if I'm to accept the idea that these are funny movies, then that shit is funny.
I'll agree.
Yeah,
I will agree. And even if I didn't agree, I would stand up for your right to find whatever you want to find funny. So.
And then Sam Rockwell, when he gets so fed up with Whiplash, and Whiplash is, I guess, cursing him out in Russian, and Sam Rockwell's just like, I don't know if you haven't noticed, but I don't speak Russian.
Yeah. I mean, it's Sam Rockwell, like you said, doing what he does best. Yeah. I think this is his best kind of character.
And they just make it as quotable as the first movie to me. If we're talking just entertainment value, I really don't think this is any kind of drop off from the first movie in terms of watchability, performances, any of that.
I will agree with that. I think as far as like the check boxes for a blockbuster, being entertaining and really kind of being a fun ride, like this I would put this on par with the first one, if not maybe above in some areas.
But the thing is that it does deviate from that summer blockbuster tone in some key ways, and that's something that people don't like about this movie, and one of the things that I love about it, right? So I don't know if it's a good time to get into that, if we want to kind of go through the rest of the cast first.
I mean, fuck it, we got no rules, man. It doesn't matter what we do.
I mean, we'll go through it quickly because we've mentioned the big players, and I don't know what else to say about Robert Downey Jr. I mean, he's as good as people say he is.
Literally perfect for, when you hear Tom Cruise might have been Tony Stark, as an alternate like thing thrown in there in like a multiverse movie, sure, I'll take that. But like, there was no better casting, in my opinion, in the entire MCU than him as Tony Stark.
Look, we stand Tom Cruise on this podcast.
Absolutely.
I'm going to tell you that it would have been a disaster. In fact, I can really see Tom Cruise bringing a Magnolia energy.
I think he would have done great.
Tony Stark, and it would not have been a revelation, though. Robert Downey was a revelation. Like Johnny Depp as Jack Sparrow. Like, we've
Transcends the
discovered
character.
gold.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. And he brought something, specific energy and, frankly, a metatextual value to that character that nobody else could. And it's very interesting to me. I think what they were doing by casting Mickey Rourke was trying to replicate the excitement from Robert Downey Jr. Of course, Mickey Rourke's comeback, you could say, was basically in full swing. I think this was the peak of that commercially. I'm sure this is his
Yeah.
highest grossing movie. But it's, you ask anybody, what's your favorite Mickey Rourke movie? Nobody's going to say Iron Man 2. It's not even his best comic book movie. So,
yeah, I would agree with that. 100%.
yeah. No, let's go through the rest of the cast really quick because I'm sure I will forget about this if I go on this tangent I'm planning to.
Reasonably so.
So look, Gwyneth Paltrow. People hate Gwyneth Paltrow. I am frankly, I have a special place in my heart for Gwyneth Paltrow. My dad showed me Shakespeare in Love when I was too young. I think he forgot how racist that movie was. And I'll just say that Gwyneth Paltrow taught me some very important things about myself as a young boy. So Miss Paltrow, she, she can come by and fill my fridge with goop anytime. Anytime.
I'll let you keep that one. I'll let you keep
Will
that
this
one.
stay in
I'm
the
not.
edit? I don't know. I don't know.
I'm not a fan of her, but I just she's like I'm just in the middle. Like I'm not a hater. The goop stuff. Like I mean, those jokes write themselves.
Yeah, look, she's a really
But
off-putting person publicly
of
sometimes.
course, yeah. I
Um,
think she's a good actress. I believe that. I think she was pretty well cast for the role of Pepper
she was a
Potts
bit of
and.
a risk too. Her star had faded by the first Iron Man, and
Oh
I
yeah.
don't think anybody would have imagined her um, playing Pepper Potts, uh,
I mean, but isn't
one of
that
those
what's kind of
throwaway characters.
isn't that what was kind of great about these early Marvel movies though? Is like everybody was kind of a chance casting. Like nobody knew who the hell Chris Hemsworth was. Chris Evans, people kind of knew who he was, but he was not remotely a Captain America type. And a lot of these
He was the
castings
Human
were a
Torch
chance.
previously, so no, I mean
Yes.
that's that was the secret weapon of Marvel Studios. The people who really get the credit for me for their success are the casting department
I would agree.
because they figured out that's where the real craft I think was taking place in figuring out not just the best people for these roles, but the most exciting, the most intriguing, um, and just the stuff that was going to drive up hype and anticipation more. No, Gwyneth Paltrow is a really good actress. I think she gets a raw deal because she won an Oscar that she shouldn't have. Shakespeare in Love. She's very good in that movie. I'm not just saying that because of my history
Yeah,
with it.
because of your awakening.
But no, I mean, watching it as an adult, yeah, it's a movie that holds up. It's very charming. She's charming in it. I really like her in Seven.
Yeah.
She doesn't get credit for that, unfortunately. But look, the reason that ending is as effective as it is, I think, is because of how much we come to like her character. I get, you know. And then she had a lot of misses, way more misses than hits by the time she does Iron Man. And then turns out she is a really great screen partner with Robert Downey Jr. They have a wonderful chemistry, very like Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn. So I think she's the magic isn't quite there this time around because I frankly think I don't know, what they do with Pepper is just make her even more of a foil for him. And that means making her angrier at him, making their exchanges a little more passive aggressive. She's a lot more stern. She doesn't get to have as much fun. Would you agree?
I would. Yeah. Yeah, I don't even. I think you put it perfectly. I don't even
Yeah,
think I have
okay.
anything else to say. Yeah,
Moving on to
I was like,
the
maybe I
other
have something else there, but no, that was
the
good.
other big uh, cast member we should address here is Terrence Howard. Wait, hold on. Let me just check my notes again.
He was off inventing a new math.
Wasn't
Yeah.
okay.
Instead, we
That's
have
super
Don Cheadle.
confusing. Wasn't
Yeah.
Terrence Howard in Iron Man 1? I could have sworn.
He was, and he was replaced. You wanna? Do we want to discuss that situation, or do we just want to move on to Don Cheadle? I mean, I don't want to spend too much time on a guy who's literally pretending that he's a super genius right now. Do you know anything about that whole saga?
No, I don't. And Terrence Howard is he's a bizarre man. He's an eccentric man.
Oh, very, yeah.
If we're talking about wasted talent and wasted
Oh my
potential,
God, man.
I mean, just
So much wasted potential.
a few years before Iron Man, he's nominated for, you know, an electric performance in Hustle and Flow.
God, awesome movie.
He's supposed to be the next big thing. And fuck, man, he is so boring in the first Iron Man.
I mean, he's doing nothing. He's given nothing. It's hard to believe that that character is going to be anything when you watch that movie. That he's not
And there
just a
is
throwaway.
a what if of like, well, what if he actually got some juicy material to work with? Unfortunately, I don't think this character, Rhodey, War Machine, has ever been given anything that's worthy of the talents of either Terrence Howard or a Don Cheadle. I
Agreed.
think Iron Man 3 at least lets him and Robert Downey Jr. really play off of each other, which is great because they do have chemistry, unlike RDJ and Terrence Howard. I think it's an open secret that RDJ is the reason Terrence Howard did not come back for Iron Man 2. Did you know that Terrence Howard was paid more for Iron Man 1, for the first Iron Man, than Robert Downey Jr.?
I believe it. I believe it.
I mean, I
I
know,
yeah.
I get that Robert Downey Jr.'s career wasn't in the best place. And Terrence Howard, he was hot at the moment, but how are you supposed to go to work and act across somebody is making more money than you, even though they have a quarter of screen time? They have
They're
to come
doing
in for a
nothing.
quarter of your schedule.
And they're doing nothing. And he's not it doesn't even feel like it feels like he's like checked out. And it's like I don't know. I was a fan of Terrence Howard. I really liked Hustle and Flow. I started hearing things about his ego, and so I was just kind of like, maybe I'll back off of watching his movies for a little while till he humbles himself. And then he's traveling to like universities to tell them that he created this new physics system and he knows the universe better than these like expert scientists, and he's just making a complete fool of himself. It's ridiculous that somebody would even pretend to do that. He's like claiming that he's inventing a new quantum physics and all this stuff. It's so dumb.
Goodwill
Um,
Hunting.
shit. But luckily, we don't have to talk about him too much more because he did get replaced by Don Cheadle.
I'm actually gonna disagree with you. I don't
Oh,
think he's great in any way, shape, or form in this movie. I think he came into a very awkward situation. I don't think he knows how to play this role. Not really blaming him, because what is he supposed to do with, especially Rhodey in this movie? Again, everybody's a foil to
yeah.
Tony Stark. He doesn't really get to have chemistry with anybody. That he's always at odds. Uh, the only person who doesn't seem to hate him or resent him is Natasha, and she is the least charismatic performer in the movie, unfortunately, even though it's the great
Mm,
Scarlett Johansson.
yeah.
So Don Cheadle he's like a block of wood in this movie. He was allowed to have more fun, even though they never fleshed out his character in the future movies. And I don't watch this show, but I heard that now it's canon for the MCU that in Secret Wars they revealed that Rhodey actually died in Civil War, and he's been a Skrull ever since. I don't know.
God, what are they doing, man? But I can sort of understand that. I actually felt that way about. I felt the way that you feel about his performance in this, maybe a little stronger about both Scarlett Johansson and, unfortunately, one of my favorite actors of all time, Samuel L. Jackson. I feel is completely wasted in this movie. I feel he is an exposition machine, and that is all he is here for. Um, and and Scarlett does nothing interesting for me at all. I want to say I think she's kind of one of the Marvel castings that I didn't really get behind. I think for the look she was really good. I think she had some strong moments as Black Widow, but I think her best performances are when she's able to kind of be a bit more of a character. You know, when she's able to transform herself a little bit more. I think she does a lot better in those roles.
I think she wants that. I mean, it's there's an infamous, clip of somebody asking her about, losing weight to fit into the Black Widow suit.
Yes, there is. Yeah,
And all of her male co-stars, they were asked about, all like, how did you find the motivation in this character and all these pretentious questions. And she has to, talk about her weight,
yeah,
you know. I don't think she has great enthusiasm for the role in this movie. I think my enthusiasm for her as Black Widow comes in waves. She's really good in The Winter Soldier. I liked her
I would
quite a
agree.
bit in Infinity War and Endgame. But no, you're right. Scarlett Johansson wants to defy that typecasting of just uh the sexy, buxom femme fatale type. You know? That's not why we fell in love with Scarlett Johansson. She is so uh charming and balances innocence with maturity in Lost in Translation, right?
Yeah,
And then she gets nominated twice in 1 year for the Oscar for both Jojo Rabbit and Marriage Story. And even though I
two
don't
great
love
performances.
Marriage Story at all, I can say that was an extremely well-deserved nomination because of the depth of pain that she went through and the total lack of vanity.
Yeah,
Yeah, basically when she's allowed to not be a movie star, I think that's when we all really uh find her the most compelling.
yeah,
And she is asked to be nothing but a movie star, nothing but a vessel for this movie. And let's do two birds with one stone. Okay, Black Widow and Nick Fury, they're very bad individually, but they're part of a really big problem with this movie. And the thing that I hear come up as the big criticism is the intrusion of the Marvel universe on this movie. Okay, this
yeah,
is often called just a prequel to the Avengers. I don't really agree with that. I can get into it, but these scenes only exist to remind us that the Avengers is going to come out soon. Absolutely.
this is where I start to get a little more upset with this movie, because I didn't know this until after my viewing. I decided to just check out some, behind the scenes stuff with this and some interviews, and everything that I saw, all the best scenes were cut out of this movie. All the best story beats that built up that story that I was missing so much from Mickey Rourke's character and from the dynamic that he has with Iron Man and everything, and so many of the actual emotional and story points of this movie were just completely cut out. Sam Jackson even delivers some of that in his nonstop exposition, and even that was cut out. You couldn't even make his exposition important. So it that to me is the most egregious thing about this movie is that they took this story that, honestly, and I'm not over exaggerating here, I really mean it when I say this. I truly believe that this could have been my favorite Marvel movie. It had the makings of it. It had the tragic story of Mickey Rourke's character. It had a great opposition to Tony Stark and Sam Rockwell's character. It had so many good pieces of a puzzle in there. And it just didn't pan out in that way. They cut
So
out so much.
I'm gonna do the dumb thing of what you just did. I'm gonna respond with what you just did, but I'm gonna make it
Make it dumber.
infuriatingly stupid for our audience. Okay.
I'm ready.
You said this would be your favorite Marvel movie. I think this is my favorite Marvel movie.
All power to you.
And here's the thing. Okay, all of these things that they're alluding to, it's not even if it's not the best version of what it could have been, right? Even if the meddling is clear, even if you learn that they gave even more screen time and fleshed these story beats out even more, them attempting these things and them giving these characters the room to be as messy as they are, emotionally messy. You know, Tony Stark really hits a low point in this movie, not because a supervillain punched him really hard, or because he's having panic attacks because of that big hole in the sky that he saw or whatever. It's, you know, he's battling internal problems. Okay, them even attempting that to me just makes this so much more interesting than pretty much anything that came after that I can recall. This is the closest to being a character study that the Marvel movies have really come for me, and it's kind of. I mean, the messiness is kind of part of what I like. People complain that this movie meanders a little bit. I mean, if we're really making a movie about a man with substance abuse problems, who has, you know, access to the most lethal weapon in the world, I kind of want that messiness. I kind of want it to get ugly, to hit these kind of raw nerves, and to just let the characters kind of marinate in that emotion. Um, Now, is some of that just kind of just because, well, they have a lot of cooks in the kitchen? Yeah, I guess, but it's messy in a way that actually deepens my relationship with these characters. If that is any kind of an excuse at all for what has to be a very bad take by all accounts.
No, but I don't think it is because I agree with everything you said, but I think I'm gonna compare this movie to a movie that people think is much worse, but I promise there's a point to it, so don't tune out as soon as I say this, anybody, including Gabe. But when we go back to another film we covered on the show that had a ton of the story beats cut out, that had a lot of the heart cut out of the movie, we can go back to Batman Forever. Now, of course, very different movie, right? Going for a different tone, going for a different lot of things, right? But there was so much heart and so much in that movie that was cut out. And I said in that episode that I didn't love that there was a lot that really could have saved the movie. I appreciated that they had what they had in there, but um, the difference between that and this is that in Batman Forever, I can reasonably sit here and defend that movie because I personally was entertained by so much more of that movie and enjoyed my experience of watching that movie so much without that stuff in it that having it there would only enhance the experience for me. With this, it feels so disappointing because I am lacking that same enjoyment as I'm watching it. It goes for me appreciating their attempt, and I do very much appreciate the attempt to put these themes in a superhero movie in what's going to become one of the largest, if not the largest, cinematic universes of all time. But I think where I get so upset is that like I'm not having a great time with the rest of what they put in here. So that would have saved it for me. And now the thing that would have saved this movie for me, what would have been my parachute to land right on the spot of saying, I think this might be my favorite Marvel movie, is only a waste of potential in my eyes.
I
So I
think
agree with
that
everything you said.
I think it's got some of the best action of the Iron Man movies and probably the MCU more broadly. I would say my favorite action sequence is that confrontation on the racetracks. It's not just because your favorite character had a cameo. I love the way it's paced. I love the way it's shot and framed. Mickey Rourke, this is his moment to shine. And even though it's not like there's a war of words happening, just his presence, just the gravitas that he
Yeah.
brings and that they allow him to bring. You know, he's unleashed in this one scene, in this glorious scene. and probably the only moment of fanboy kind of a fangasm that I had is when Tony Stark pulls out the little suitcase, um, and and it turns out to be the Iron Man suit, because in the comics, which I had read after the first Iron Man, he famously had a suitcase, that you would open it up and the Iron Man suit kind of assembled itself. And here they actually improved it in a pretty cool way. The suitcase is the suit. The
Yeah.
suit case. Oh, I just got
Uh,
that. Well, I made that sound worse, but I don't know. Like, there's that scene. I love the scene between him and War Machine. And let me tell you something. It's kind of this like Devil's Rejects thing of like I don't know who to root for, and that actually makes it more intriguing. Like, it actually
hmm.
ups my investment. The fact that it's so messy, it's so emotionally chaotic, and I don't know how I feel. I just know that I'm really in this confrontation. I'm really immersed in this confrontation.
I can appreciate that. I think the action that I prefer is more so like what we get in Captain America Winter Soldier. To me, that is like the peak of the action, and it's very grounded in a lot of ways compared to the rest of the Marvel movies.
What's the
Um,
nature, right? You have a guy with a shield
right.
versus a
Exactly.
man in a this suit of armor versus a guy with
Right.
electric whips.
Yeah. And I think that first scene, I can certainly appreciate what you're saying. I think I would have liked it to have been more important in the entire context of the movie because of the importance that they set this character up to have. But I mean it's badass. Like what can you say? Like I'm gonna go off of the film dude bro. Let me get deep with this man and just say like oh no it kicked ass. I mean Mickey Rourke had a great presence in that scene. Um, and it's an exciting sequence. It's my favorite scene in the entire movie, personally.
Oh yeah, it's my favorite scene. It's something that was featured a lot in the promotional material because it is just on its face the most exciting scene.
Yeah,
But the way we get into that scene is really interesting too. Tony is, he is dying, and he's gotten so reckless. His behavior is so reckless that he decides to get into a car at what is this, the Grand Prix or something like that.
whatever it is. Yeah,
Uh, and it's like a drunk driving episode almost. And I really have to wonder how Robert Downey Jr. felt seeing the material go in this direction. I'm curious, was this something he was comfortable with? Is this something that he might have actually suggested because he wanted to be allowed to connect to Tony's journey even more? I don't know. I mean, Iron Man was an alcoholic in the comics. The most famous story he has is Demon in a Bottle, right?
right.
So just the fact that not only is the action executed so well, but the actual emotional context for me is actually something that really enriches it. That's the big distinction between this and Captain America: The Winter Soldier, because I know that's a very popular movie.
Yeah,
Maybe I think the Russo brothers are the villains of movies right now. I mean, just
I get it.
unambiguously antagonist to the existence of humanity, if I can just be
I
real with
mean,
you. Just the shit they say about AI and the complete aloofness and nonchalance they have about it really frightens me. That they have more influence than Martin Scorsese or Steven Spielberg, I guess, in the industry at this point. But getting back to this movie, Jon Favreau is a hell of a director, and I know he was very unhappy with his experience making this movie. That's why he
yeah,
didn't direct Iron Man 3, and that's why he made the movie Chef, which is brilliant. I love
very
that.
good. Very good. And he would go on to be now he's an integral part of the Star Wars universe. You know, he was able to kind of weasel his way in. Not in a bad way. I'm not saying that in a bad way. He gave us probably the best stuff we've gotten since Disney bought that effing
I mean,
thing.
wasn't he already involved starting with the Clone Wars with that show?
Um, I believe loosely, but he like his involvement really got strong when they started The Mandalorian,
Sure.
which truthfully is my favorite thing I believe that Disney has done. I would say I know this is an unpopular opinion, but I like the Obi-Wan show a little bit more. I think, but um, that's just me being nostalgic. Anyways, going back to this movie. First off, completely agree with you. The Russo brothers, I do believe, are villains, comically so. I don't like them. Uh,
Especially Joe Russo. Like
it's just
Anthony, at least he
yeah.
keeps quiet. Joe Russo will come out and say, oh, after we're done, movie theaters will all be just VR headsets, and then this will accompany some photo shoot of him in a leather jacket standing against his little, his Maserati or whatever the fuck he's bought with his MCU money.
Yeah, you know what? Like I was just gonna move on from him, but like I get really I try not to get offended often. Like I'm not one of those people who just sits on their computer and is like, that offends me. You need to stop. But I get offended when people attack what I believe is the sanctity of movie making, the magic that goes into making a movie. And when I see these just soulless, vapid, empty, just shells of what a movie should be being thrown out and everybody just thinks it's so great. I will never forget watching Justice League for the first time. I know that's DC and it's different, but watching that for the first time and then listening to people around me go, "Oh wow, that was a lot of fun. I really like that." I wanted to vomit. I was like, this is not a movie. This doesn't feel like a movie. I feel like I just watched like cutscenes from a really bad disjointed video game. And the Russo brothers, to me, especially Joe, like you said, it just feel like that is like they are the poster children for that movement of
Proudly.
removing the magic from movies.
Like, look, I can see the argument that they're just doing their job. They're just taking a paycheck, doing what they do. But I mean, and I'm sure it must sting for Martin Scorsese to come out and say that your movies are like a theme park. Um, and so if they want to be bitchy about it, I guess I can't necessarily blame them,
In
but
his
don't take it out
defense,
on the.
he has a right to respond to somebody criticizing his work, and I
Yeah,
will defend him for that.
I mean,
Yes,
you have to have self-awareness about it.
of course.
Sorry, bud, I mean, you didn't make Taxi Driver or Goodfellas. You made Avengers Infinity War. It's just not the same kind of thing.
That's I think what I don't appreciate about it is like if it's not quite the level of like Uwe Boll and how he defends his movies, but it's like you're not making like high art, dude. Like you didn't direct Lady Bird. Like just say, just come out and say like, oh yeah, like yeah, I made a theme park in a movie, but that theme park made $1 billion. So sorry,
Yeah,
like
Michael
that's
Bay. I mean, I've not a guy
perfect
I
example.
use as a model for this kind
No,
of
but
stuff
he's
often.
very transparent about what he makes. At least he
He's very
knows what he's
transparent,
doing.
and I think he's totally content with himself. And I think if Martin Scorsese said, which he might have said publicly, that Michael Bay can eat my ass, he would say, "Okay, Marty." um, you know,
I'll wipe my tears with my $2 billion I have in my bank account right now. That's like
exactly. So getting
valid
back to this
response. Yeah.
movie, yeah, this to me is just it's the last time I see the thumbprint of a real narrative vision. Like Thor Ragnarok, it's a very funny movie. That's not the same as having like a story that you are dying to tell or a character that you think you can really take on an interesting journey. Like this is the last attempt at that specific thing. Thor Ragnarok, I'm not going to put it down. It was a very entertaining movie, but there is a reason why I've never felt the need to rewatch it.
And that's fair. And I kind of like glossed over it, but like this movie does have a lot to say, but it just says very little. I mean, it replaces a lot of what it has to say with a filler or I'll say a preview for what's to come in the Marvel universe. And it's more than what we've covered so far. I mean, there's a tragedy to Ivan's character, but there's also things we find out about his father's intentions of selling the weapons to the Soviets, and that's why he was cut out of this whole thing. And then there's the whole, sort of questioning, and we saw this happen in the Batman in 2022, but the questioning this hero figure that you have, your father, like you start to think back on those things a little bit more, and they start to mean something different, and then
Mhm.
you start to wonder about it, and then there, that was such an interesting thing. There were so many things that weaved together, and it didn't say enough.
What I would like to know, it's great that you bring up the Batman because that leads to a very sincere question. Why why tell me why the Batman does it better than Iron Man 2 because I'm not convinced that it does.
I felt like it had more weight. I mean, like I felt it in the Batman. I was with it. The story, I was with the story, and it felt like it
Mhm.
wasn't substituting senselessness or world building for the purpose of telling the story that it wanted to tell. That this movie felt like it was getting in its own way, and the Batman to me doesn't feel like that. I
Um,
have, but
I
again, I am
understand that.
biased.
Yeah.
I
No,
think
I
the
understand
Batman
that.
is incredible. So
I like I'm not going to say that this is better than the Batman, but what I will say is that I didn't the Batman really frustrated me with how it handled that. And this
okay.
movie it kind of disappointed me, but it didn't frustrate me, you know? I mean, the Batman, the fact that that whole thing with Thomas Wayne is brought up and then resolved in the next scene in a way that doesn't challenge our idea of Thomas Wayne. It just kind of reaffirms what a great guy he is and what a bad guy Carmine Falcone is. Yeah, that was a real sticking point for me.
I'll say this, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I think the reason I appreciated it a little bit more was because it wasn't treated like the like I'm not gonna call it an arc in this movie because I guess it's not that, but that storyline is not treated the same way in the Batman as it is in this. Like it's very much treated as this like huge. I felt like the Batman was treating it as, yes, it's a big deal for this character, and we see him react to it in real time of thinking, oh my god, my dad was a monster. Like this is shattered, but it was all it really was in the scheme of the movie was a distraction. It was something to get him
Yeah.
off course, something to, and that's what I think I appreciated about it so much, is that it didn't try to be something that it wasn't. This movie, I don't feel like it's doing that per se, but I felt like you had more setup and you had more story that is verifiably in the deleted scenes of this movie that could have made it so much better. And it just isn't there. Do I still appreciate what they did at the end, like wrapping it up and having his father say, my true greatest creation is you, my son?
Yeah,
Yes,
going
but
back to this movie, people complain a lot about the way that they use uh, Tony Stark Sr., right?
Howard
The
Stark.
Howard Stark.
Yeah.
It's because Robert Downey Jr. and Robert Downey Sr. That's why I made that mistake.
I mean, I'm not gonna shit on you for it. I'm
Howard
good.
Stark, Howie Stark, um, the guy from Mad Men, which is really what he is to me.
Yep.
People complain about his role in this movie because he's basically a Deus Ex Machina and not one that makes a whole lot of sense. I don't know how
Yeah.
Tony synthesized a new element in under a day, but well, okay. But see, people are such hypocrites. Nobody cared. Nobody had a problem that Tony solved time travel in 5 minutes in Endgame.
I mean, I don't know, man. Maybe the illusion of this movie having a deeper story and trying to do something that's deeper than just make a action blockbuster gave people more expectations. I don't
I
know.
think we were just judging these movies differently.
It could very well
Frankly, I
be the
think
case too.
right now people judge Marvel movies on a curve, right?
I will definitely agree with that.
And Iron Man 2, especially coming after the pretty acclaimed if, and celebrated, predecessor in Iron Man. Yeah, I guess that felt like a disappointment to people. For me, it was really about the emotional journey. Like I didn't care how Tony came to the um, how he came to make that element. It's not as uh, it's just not as important to me. I guess you could say I'm grading it on a curve, but for me, it's the emotional journey. Like I don't care why Peter loses his powers in Spider-Man 2, and I don't care literally why he gets them back. I mean, the emotional arc is there and it's resonant. And this one is resonant in its own way. It's metatextual. It's we know Robert Downey Jr.'s history with his father, and that brings a layer to the scene. But I think just on the page, I think the performances it works. I like you said, that was a profound moment. I That's all I really needed from this movie. It was a moment to really let this character come to an arc, come to a new chapter, and then we can get on with the action. I just needed that moment.
And look, maybe that'll be that for me one day. Maybe I just need to adjust my expectations before going back into this. I didn't do that when I rewatched it. I just said, I'm just gonna go into it like I normally would go into one of these movies. And again, I had fully admitted at the beginning of the show that I do have a bit of a bias against the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Um, Not a strong one. I just don't care about it. uh, and it annoys me that people keep trying to make me care about it so much, Kevin. But yeah, I mean, it just that's all it comes down to me is that I had expectations for this movie that it didn't meet, and they're not all expectations that were unjustified for me to have. The movie does set up things that I feel is a reasonable thing to be disappointed by. I do wish I had your experience watching this where
Mm.
I did come out appreciating this more. I don't ever want to dislike a movie or my experience watching one, but I just didn't come out on the end that I would have wanted to in this one.
Yeah, and I'm wearing rose-colored glasses. I mean, this is a much better movie in hindsight to me. Uh, I just think it's the last interesting movie that the MCU has made, not directed by James Gunn.
Well, it's a could be a very fair point there. There's definitely evidence to support what you said.
Yeah. Now, is there anything else to say about Iron Man 2?
I think we just about. I think we covered everything. Honestly, I mean we've
Let
talked
me let me
about a
also
lot.
defend the movie one more time. There's a complaint that the last battle between Iron Man and Whiplash is too short. Okay. Okay. Can we have a conversation about this? Not every fight scene has to go on for 20 minutes. It
I
is
completely
fine.
agree. No, I actually kind of appreciated that it was shorter because I didn't feel like I got everything I wanted out of the story. So there was no, I didn't feel the emotional weight like I feel like I should. Like if you're gonna put a lot of weight into a story and into a build to a fight scene, I can appreciate that fight scene being like 10 minutes, or like however long you want to make it. But like I didn't feel what I wanted to feel in this, so I appreciated like the short and sweet nice little action scene that we got
I mean, I
more than I
liked
would
it,
have.
and I'm more into Whiplash, and I'm more into his rivalry with Tony. It's not Batman and the Joker or Doc Ock and Spider Man, but it's you know, it delivered for me. I really had no complaints. I don't even mind how they kill him. You know, the
Fair.
Chekhov's crossing of the streams, if you will.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
So, and just the whole climax, taking place at that expo. The sequence in the air with all the drones chasing Iron Man. I love the fact that Rhodey's actually in that suit. He's being forced to try to take down his own friend. It's a great. This movie has a couple of really interesting, just sly commentary on things like the military, in drone warfare, and the relationship between private enterprise and the armed forces. Fuck, we have. I mean, how have I not mentioned this? Okay, if we're talking about the worst cast member, here's the worst cast member, Elon Musk. Okay,
That is very, very, very fair.
I mean, we have a movie about a sociopathic billionaire who thinks he is way cooler than he is. And then we have Elon Musk in the same movie. This
Dude, I
movie
didn't
just
even
went
think about that.
from fun to prophetic.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, oh boy. Oh man. I'm glad you brought it up, but like I don't even want I like what can we even say about that Elon Musk hasn't said about himself in his actions and words, man? Like I
Well, we don't need to linger on it. I think it speaks for itself.
ugh, good lord.
People either will agree with us or they won't.
That didn't age
Yeah,
well for
but
me, I'll tell you that.
for real, do we have anything else to say now?
I no, I think we summed it up pretty well. I mean, you're gonna go into this movie and you're gonna be on either side, or maybe you'll be in the middle. Maybe you'll just be like, meh, it was fine. But this is a movie that feels like the last of its kind in some ways. Had a real attempt to do something, and I think we can all, at the very least, appreciate that.
I know I certainly do. There are people that are on the opposite side. They would rather prefer um, a safe movie that's executed well. And sometimes I can agree. I mean, sometimes we have a fiasco versus a competent movie that
Yeah.
I would rather sit through. But I think the disaster of Iron Man 2 is overstated to say the least. Mickey Rourke really is given time to shine. And as a fan of his, as a person who came to this movie as an adult to watch him, I was happy with what I got. Mickey Rourke wasn't happy. That's why he never came back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because Mickey Rourke can't keep his mouth shut. He is
Uh, Gotta
as
respect
great of
him
an
a little
actor
bit for
as
that.
he is an idiot of a person.
I mean, it's you got to respect somebody who says what's on their mind at the very least. But
Okay, no, and normally I would go with that. Mickey Rourke was almost homeless before
yeah, yeah,
people gave him a second chance. And he said he was very grateful and that he learned a lot of mistakes. I think clearly he did not, because something he should have learned is there's no point in publicly criticizing your own employers after the movie comes out. If he wants to, if he wants to take his career on his own terms, all the power to him, but there's no reason to, I mean, he's not publicly outing Harvey Weinstein. He's complaining about
right.
his scenes getting cut. And to me, that
Yeah,
doesn't help anyone. For people that were happy to see his resurgence, it honestly just feels like his comeback was wasted.
I can appreciate that sentiment for sure.
Have you
You know,
seen a movie with Mickey Rourke in it in the last 10 years?
mm, let me think here. Let me think here. 10 years. Sin City 2, A Dame to Kill For.
Did you see that?
I did.
You're one
It was
of
not very. It was
few
not very
people
good.
that did.
It was not very good. Yeah, it was not very good. Let me think here. What else was he in? Let me. What else was he in? Has he been in
Yeah,
anything?
exactly.
Let's see. Apparently, he was in Nightmare Cinema in
Yeah, I think he
2019.
has a small role in that.
He didn't go any. He didn't go any further than the first Expendables movie, which was back in 2010. No. Besides Sin City, A Dame to Kill For, which was literally like we're coming up on the point where that is 10 years ago. That was back in 2014. Um, no, I haven't seen anything. I mean, no, nothing. No, it's a shame.
It's a
Guy's
shame.
got kids got talent, but you know, oh well.
Yeah, the kid, the 60-year-old kid,
The 60-year-old horrifying, horrifying human being, Mickey
the
Rourke.
the 60-year-old Putin apologist. Oh
Oh
yeah.
God.
Oh yeah. Okay, well, speaking of squandering goodwill, I'm sure we're squandering goodwill by dragging this out.
Yeah.
We've talked up this movie. We've talked about this movie. We've dissected it, and I'm guessing that our listeners can tell where we're both going to land. But
Yeah.
what the hell? Let's get into it. It was my pick. I would like to see you deliver your verdict first.
Yeah, so Iron Man 2 is a movie that really had an opportunity to be something great. I think, to keep my thoughts brief on this, I mean, hell, half of this probably won't make the edit anyways as far as the episode is concerned. But when I'm talking about this movie, I felt like I felt like this is a classic example of taking something that really could have been great and really could have taken this genre of films to a place that I think it really should still be at to this day. Instead, it was an example of a studio getting real overzealous and really mixing their hands in where they shouldn't be mixing their hands in. It's unfortunate. I think it's a true waste of potential when you watch this, and I did not have a great time watching it. This is not a movie I enjoy. It's not Iron Man 3, which it gets point for that. It gets points for that. But it is still Iron Man 2, and for that reason, this movie's got a 2.8 on Letterboxd. I'm gonna say it is that bad.
Yeah, that's fair. I can't argue with some of the criticisms about this movie. The film's director, John Favreau, certainly agrees with a lot of them. It doesn't seem like it's a movie that many of its cast and crew are proud of. The MCU is not proud of it. A lot of people would call it one of the worst. I think it's one of the more unfortunate because of some squandered potential, but the potential that I got to see was more engaging than the safe routes that this that these characters have been taking, this studio's been taking since. I think Robert Downey Jr. is not only just as charismatic, he's allowed to bring more nuance and take Tony to some darker places that I'm actually surprised that he got away with, even back in the early days of Marvel Studios. I think not only is the action some of the better choreographed and better shot, but has a lot more emotional context that actually, again, get me invested in a way that just major blockbusters are struggling to do these days, MCU or not. It's a pretty interesting kind of not a commentary on power, a sort of this discussion, this open discussion, this question, and it explores the relationship between responsibility and power in a much more candid way than most superhero films do. I mean, the screenwriting, in terms of plotting, narrative, structure, and pacing, it could have used a lot more work. And it's a shame to know that this could have been a much better movie. But is it the worst MCU movie? Hell no. Is it worthy of its reputation? Absolutely not. And did I enjoy it? I really did, and I would happily rewatch it. So I'm going to say it's actually good.
Ooh, I can appreciate the hell out of that. And I want to say something that you mentioned there is something I did forget to bring up about a positive about this movie. I do think the cinematography is quite good. I think it's shot very well. And man, I am always happy to hear a movie get an actually good or an actually great here. No matter what my opinion is on it, very happy to see that rating arrive for this movie for you. So, all the power to you, my friend.
Well, guys, rush to Letterboxd and give this movie 5 stars so we can
Give it the not
give
that
out
bad
that bad
bump.
bump.
Yeah. Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, this is not. Had to fit that reference in there before the end. However, I do think, like, if you, even though I have my opinion about this, I do think if you temper your expectations and you're able to enjoy this movie, I do think there is a lot to get out of this. It's not like an empty sequel like we see with so
Yeah.
many other properties out there. But
Regardless of how the movie came out, like the sum of its parts, I mean, a lot of these parts are better than people give it credit for. That's absolutely true.
yeah,
Now, you can still finish the movie and still not be impressed, not have been engaged, but I do think credit needs to be given to some of the things that just get neglected. I mean, for a franchise that was famous for having just terrible, really rote villains, this movie really defied that for me. And even with his short screen time, Mickey Rourke really brought something to the MCU that I think it desperately needed more of.
Very fair point, sir. A very fair point. And if we have an audience left after some of the disparaging words we've said about the MCU throughout this episode, I will hope that they enjoyed this episode, and I hope that they consider subscribing, commenting, liking, sharing the episodes. It's helps us tremendously to get our stuff out there. If you want one place to go where you can find all of our stuff, all of our links, all of our fun things, bios about Gabe and I, you can head on over to notthatbadpod.com. You see the graphic on the screen. We have all of that and more, and we have another place that you can support us if you really want to take it to the next freaking level. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/notthatbad. Gabe, what kind of stuff do they get if they wanna throw us a couple extra bucks here and there?
Oh, uh, people can get exclusive reviews, exclusive episodes months in advance before anybody else will hear them. They'll also get merch, and they will get the comfort of supporting true independent creators like ourselves.
Yeah, and one of the things I'd like to say too is like some of those episodes may stay exclusive. We don't really have a roadmap to release those. Like, we've released some in the past that we felt like it was time for people to see them, or we felt like we maybe we weren't available to film an episode, so we, we might have thrown one of those out there. But like, there are still Patreon specials that people have not seen outside of our Patreon. We covered Santa's sleigh last Christmas for our Christmas special. We covered a ton of Leprechaun movies that people have not seen us talk about because those are all still on our Patreon. And there are several other movies that we have not released yet. There's a chance that there will be that in the future as well. So if you want to become, part of that exclusive group where we will release these specials every time that we have an opportunity and come up with an idea for one. So we
Yeah.
hope that you'll head on over there and that you'll enjoy them.
If you want to be a not that bad guy, just hit like and subscribe and join us on this crazy ride.
Yes,
That's what our fans call themselves, not that bad guys.
yeah, whether no matter what you identify as, you're a not that bad guy if you watch this show and enjoy
I
this show.
insist upon guys being a gender neutral term.
Yeah.
I can't
Oh,
eradicate
100%.
guys from my vocabulary. When I see a group of people,
Hey
it's not
guys.
it's not hey boys,
Yeah.
hey girls. It's hey guys.
Dude, as somebody from the Midwest, it's like down south, they're hi y'all, hey y'all. I know I'm a hey guys, hey guys, how's
Y'all
it
is
going?
something I did have to eradicate from my
Yeah,
vocabulary
yeah,
after
damn
moving
Texan.
out west.
You damn Texan. No, no, all seriousness. Yes, we want to thank everybody for supporting the show. Obviously, Gabe and I did not experience any actual problems, but we did have to spend some time not releasing an episode. Unfortunately, I got ill for a period of time, nothing serious, but was unable to record an episode. So we appreciate everybody sticking with us. You kept watching and kept listening based on the numbers that we saw. So awesome. Thank you so much for that support. And thank you for everything going forward. Hope you enjoyed this episode and hope you continue to enjoy the episodes. We got some real fun stuff coming from here. So, Gabe, anything else you'd like to say before you take us home?
Um, that I want my bird.
You motherfucker. I can always rely on you to say some shit at the end of the episode that makes me shake my head. And you know what, man? I love you
Literally,
for
whenever Connor asks me, Gabe, do you have anything? All I do is just go through the movie and just try and find the most random quote that I can, but still so
Oh my
recognizable
god.
that people will get it. So just a little peek on what goes on behind the scenes and not that bad. If you're wondering how do Gabe and Connor pull it off. Um, I just pulled back the curtain. You guys saw the magic, and now
I
we're
heard I heard he comes up with the AKAs before the episode. Oh God, this is terrible. All right, let's take this thing
All right,
home.
we're definitely taking this thing home. I'm Gabe.
I guess I'm Connor.
He guesses, and I guess this is not that bad signing out.